Good morning. I'm on my way to Pittsburgh today. There is a truck in a yard, a very sad looking truck in a yard, that has the manual steering column that I have been looking for a while. It's also got some other goodies on it that may or may not be good. I'll have to see what the guy who's selling the parts says, you know, what he wants for the stuff. I've got some extra cash with me. Nothing that I need, but some things that might be good to have. I'm going to take a look at the heater box and see if that's in any good shape. It's a pickup truck without the bed. It's just the cab, and a bunch of stuff has been already picked off of it. I think the hood is missing. Fenders look like they're in rough shape. There's no grill, and the grill surround looks like it's in pretty rough shape. I'll take a look at that just to see, but I think it was bent up pretty good. So just sort of play it by ear when I get there. The big thing is the steering wheel, and I think that's only going to be maybe 8 to 10 bolts total. The big issue are going to be the bolts on the steering box itself. If I've got to basically leave the steering box behind, I can do that, but if I can get the steering box and the wheel, I'll do that too. So we'll just sort of see what happens. It's about 3.5 hours to get out to this place. It's a beautiful day for a drive. Pennsylvania is gorgeous right now. The leaves are just coming out. All the fields are like super green. Actually reminds me a lot of driving through Ireland. Anyway, I'm going to turn this off now, and I will pick it back up when I get there. So driving up through Pittsburgh was really fun. It's a beautiful city. There's all kinds of great old buildings and stuff around here. I would love to stay and explore for a couple of days. I bet it's really cool. I went over probably 80 bridges getting to where I was going, which was kind of fun. If I didn't know where I was going, I would be really lost. And then I pulled into the lot where the trucks were and saw him almost immediately, so I just drove right up to him and backed my car up to it so I could unload. He also had this really nice D-Series truck there, but that was not for sale. So I'm not going to bore you with too many hours of sped up footage, but I'll show you where I got started. This was basically when I was trying to take apart the steering box, get the steering box off of the frame. And it was really kind of difficult because this is actually a four-wheel drive truck, and there's a gusset in the way where the bolts that go through the manual steering box and through the frame, the nuts are on the inside of the frame, in between the gusset and the frame. And they are, of course, rusted solid because this is a Pennsylvania truck. So I basically had to bust out a cutting wheel and start cutting these things off. And that was very difficult. Luckily, I was smart and I brought my generator with me. And so I powered up the generator and ran the cutoff wheel. And within, I would say, probably about 10 minutes, I had all 3 bolts pretty much ground off. I took a fair bit of the box off as well, but I do have a spare box in my garage, so I wasn't all that worried about it. I was pretty pleased with myself for having brought the generator, but as I finished this part up, I realized I was a dumbass and I forgot to bring a steering wheel puller, which would have been super helpful for getting the steering wheel out of the cab of the truck. So I called upon my gracious host Joey, and he looked around in his shop for one. We found a huge one that didn't work, so he took me down to the other shop where he's got a beautiful C-Series wrecker sitting in the midst of a restoration. It's this one here. Just absolutely glorious truck. He did a really, really nice job on it. You could eat off this paint. Just beautiful. Look at that. Look at that pinstripe. That's just really nice work there.
That it makes me old, but like at the same time, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, I mean, come on.
Yeah, and then
looks great underneath. I mean, it's really nice, man.
Made it up real nice, and then like I said, I had my bright idea of trying to put that axle from the truck you're getting stuff out of under here. Nothing works. Like I said, I ripped the rear axle out of this, put that one up in it, and it didn't work. And then Yeah, but it's coming together finally. I just, like I said, I'm waiting on I'm waiting on a wheel seal, inner wheel seal, and then I'll finish this back up, and then we put an 8-shot stringer.
But he showed me this truck, and then he dug through his tools and found a really good steering wheel puller, and I got back to it on the junkyard truck. It's always really nice when you've got the right tools. And looking in hindsight, if I had tried to pull anything out of the truck when I was up in New York, I wouldn't have had any of the right tools to do what I needed to do, and it would have been probably impossible. I would have been up there for probably 8 hours, and I'd probably still be up in that field trying to get that thing out. So I think all things being equal, I mean, it was a long drive out here, but I made out really well with this truck. So I'm super thankful that I got this opportunity. Anyhow, after Joey set me up with the right puller, the wheel came off in, seriously, like 5 minutes. It was super easy. And I was able to move on to the next step, which was actually trying to figure out how to get the column out of this thing. So from here, I pulled out an inner retainer ring, which seemed to be holding some other stuff on. I wanted to try to clear things out to see what else I had to get to behind that ring. In hindsight, I probably didn't need to pull that out, but I did anyway, and I've still got all the parts. You can see I'm catching them there as they're falling on the floor. And at this point, I started pulling on the thing to see if it was free to come out, and I realized that the spline shaft was moving independently of the outer column, and a little light bulb went off in my head. At this point, I'm realizing, okay, the electrics are still hooked up, and I've got to disconnect the electrics because they were sort of holding that column in place. And that took a little bit of time because I had to chase him down and undo a bunch of, crazy farmer wiring. He had spliced some stuff in, and I had to basically pick apart the plastic connecting box, the Packard 56 connectors, which were crumbling in my hands, but also didn't want to give up. Once I'd gotten all that stuff disconnected, this thing started coming out very easily, actually. And what I realized was, if I was smart, I could pull the shaft from the front of the truck out from underneath the front of the truck and just leave the column in and then figure out what to do with the column next. So I was getting a little smarter as I kept going here, or at least I'm going to tell myself I was. So at this point, I'm sort of making a game plan, and I figure, okay, I'm just going to grab onto this box and give it a yank and see what happens. And you can see here, it basically just sort of falls out of my lap. After I am able to get it around the frame, you can see there, I just sort of pulled it out and laid the box on the ground, and then cleaned a whole crap ton of axle grease off my hands. Got some gloves, pulled the whole thing out. There's the whole thing in one piece, and I leaned it up against my car. Then I got back in the truck and started figuring out, okay, how do I get this thing out? This is sped up. Basically, I'm under this thing trying to get, like I said, the electrical stuff all disconnected. It's basically I think it's a 6-prong Packard 56 connector and some other stuff. And then the whole thing sort of slides out. There was also a zip tie I had to disconnect here too, but that went really quickly. Once I got the wiring clear of all the stuff under the dash, the whole thing just pulled right out, and basically I think I pulled it out and bumped the camera. It came out so fast, which was kind of funny. This was a little bit more electrical tape I hadn't noticed, so I just had to unwind that stuff. So you can see here, boom, right into the camera. And I figured here they had to have gotten it in the truck somehow, so there had to be a way to get it out. And it just was a matter of figuring out what the proper procedure was. I didn't want to break anything, I didn't want to bend anything, so I just sort of sat and looked at it for a couple minutes and considered, and in a couple of seconds I realized there's the retaining clip underneath this thing that's in the way. So I think I've got my hand on that, and I'm taking that, and oh yeah, this was like a rubber gasket that was in there. But there is a retaining clip. It's basically the clip that holds the column up to the dashboard. And I realized that's still in the way, and I think I bend that down. And once I bent that thing down, things started getting a lot easier. Yeah, just yanking on that thing, and then the thing fell out, and then it was just a matter of moving it over the two pedals,
Nice.
and the whole thing came right out. And then from here, I just started looking at some of the other stuff that was in the dash. There was a bunch of spare parts that were sitting up on top of the dash, a couple of old door handles, some other things. This was an old instrument column or instrument panel that had been painted a horrid shade of blue, and there was a radio block-off plate. Somebody had put some other gauges in. This was just in rough shape, so I left it behind. I've already got 3. I don't need another one. And the one that was in the truck was in good shape.
So let's take a look hack here and see what else we've got. Oh, that's kind of cool. I wish the rest of that was still in decent shape. That would have been a nice find. Keystone light, sure. It's a light switch. I don't know. That's pretty junky. Door linkage, maybe. Spare ashtray, sure. Door handle. I've got a ton of door handles. I don't know that I need any more at this point. Probably an old school brake. Yeah, it's a brake controller. What else is in here? Center block. Oh, look at that. That's an old school set of gauges right there. And then the international one would have been there. So that probably isn't even a stock international gauge, be my guess. Bunch of hose sections. This is a door crank from a different colored truck. Light bulb. Oh, there's a set of trim rings. I'm going to take that trim ring because that's the same kind that I have on my truck. Definitely put that aside. Another air bath oil cleaner, which I don't do. 2 of those already. Another light bucket. Box of screws. This thing. Shifting unit of some kind. I don't see an input in that output though. I'm not really sure what that is. Leave that here. So I need to torch those off, looks like. Alright. Here's another 50 or 68 grill, which I don't need. I've already got 2 of them. A couple of old school mirrors. There are 2 pieces of good glass in this truck. This is, well, maybe not. I guess not so good. They've got springs laying on them, so I'm sure they were probably overstressed and broke at some point. I don't want to mess with that because I don't want to break anything in here. And then a couple of door panels. Let me pull those out and I'll see what those look like really quick. All right, I'm just about out of here. Just go back over this thing one last time. She gave her all. I think I've gotten everything that I need out of her. And I see a wasp in there now, and I'm glad I'm not banging around on this thing with the wasp in there. Feeling pretty good about what I got. The steering column is the best part. So it's, what time is it now? Oh boy, it's coming up on 4, so I'm going to be getting home late. So I'm just waiting on Joey to come back. I'll give him his money, and then I'll hit the road. Just take a really quick look around Grandpappy's truck here. This is a really nice old truck. It looks like it needs some work, but it's actually in super good shape. The cab corners are in really nice shape. The hood is in really nice shape. The bed is in, I mean, it's rough over there, but that tailgate is in really nice shape. That's a nice looking truck. This is not for sale though. He's not going to sell this one. This is he's going to hopefully rebuild this for his grandfather. So I guess he's looking for some new quarters or something. That's a really pretty color too. I like that color a lot. Pennsylvania, 1980. That's hilarious. I'm on my way back home from Pittsburgh. Had a successful trip. The guy that was selling me the parts, Joey, could not have been a cooler dude. Helped me out, super understanding. This dumbass goes to buy a steering column and forgets to bring a steering wheel puller. So Joey said, "Oh yeah, we got one in the shop." Turned out the one in the shop that they had was too big. He said, "I got another one down the street. Let's go get it." We run down. We go pick up the steering wheel puller. Come back. Steering wheel comes off like that. Super easy. I got a bunch of other useful parts. Couple of things that will be good to have. Couple of things, it's nice to have spares of, but nothing, nothing that was like a super need to have. I think that the steering wheel and the column itself was the big win. The other interesting thing about the column is that I learned how it's actually made. The rod itself that goes up into the passenger compartment is connected to the steering wheel, the steering box that's bolted to the frame. And then there's a sleeve that goes over top of that that's connected to the actual column. And that sort of cleans it up and makes it look nice. And then the steering wheel is splined to that rod, that interior rod, and then screwed in place. So it's a two-part deal, basically like a rod and a cover. And what I learned was that I was able to pull the box and the rod out from the front of the truck, and I was able to pull the column cover and the unit that, with the turn signal and all that stuff out through the cab. I was originally worried that I wasn't going to be able to get the whole thing out. I would have to disassemble the whole, front of the truck and everything. And I didn't find this out when I worked on the green truck, because I never pulled the steering wheel off the green truck. Had I done that, I could have gotten away with not having to cut that whole thing up. That was a whole big nightmare. So I know how this thing goes together now, and I could disassemble it. And there's a very good chance that I might be able to use parts from the green truck. We'll have to see. Anyway, real successful day. Was there for, I think, about 4 hours. I'm on my way back home now. I've got to stop and get some food because I'm ravenously hungry. I didn't have any lunch. I just worked through lunch. Had a couple of Cliff Bars, but I'll get some food. And from what this is telling me, I should be getting back somewhere between 7 and 8 o'clock tonight. These are some of the things I got from the truck. This is a radio block-off plate that's in really nice shape. Hasn't been touched, hasn't been cut. That'll come in really handy. I've got a very rusty windshield wiper motor here. I have no idea if it's going to be any good. From what Joey was telling me, this truck was sitting in a yard without a hood, so I'm sure this thing is probably full of water and rust. But I figured I'd grab it, bring it home, we'll give it a try. Maybe it's better than the spare that I've got. Got a couple of door cards here, metal door cards, which are in really nice shape, actually. I've got a couple of extra visors for a C-Series truck, which are also in really nice shape. They actually might be in better shape than the ones that I've got, which would be funny. I've got another instrument cluster here for a 67, which is in really nice shape. A little bit of surface rust. Again, this thing was, I think, out among the elements, so it's not in the best shape, but all of the stuff is here. All of the dials and switches and stuff are here. Should be good to have for a spare. I've got a spare blower motor for a heater unit here. This one spins freely. I have no idea if it works, but I'll bring it home and put it on the bench tester and see what it does. There's one trim ring for a 63 truck, which is kind of bent. Not in the best shape, but I might be able to salvage it and do something with it. We'll see, because these are pretty rare. And then there's another set of trim rings here that were in the truck that have the same lip on them that might work for this truck. I have no idea. I'll have to put them on mine and see. But they've got the same catch and bolt hole at the 12 o'clock and the 6 o'clock position that my trim rings do. So I'll have to see if that works. That's kind of cool. And then finally, I've got one window crank unit here, which was just sitting in the truck. I might be able to refurbish that and fix it up. This is for a C-Series truck. I've already got one of these that my buddy Ray sent me home with from Massachusetts. We'll have to see if this one works as well.
So let's recap where we are with the steering project. This is a manual transmission power steering column from the green truck. This one is a manual transmission 3 on the tree steering column from a manual truck. And this is a manual steering, manual transmission column from the truck that I just got this past weekend. So there's a lot of similarities and there's a lot of differences here. This column and that column are the same. If I take that steering wheel off, I'm going to get exactly what I see over here, in that there's going to be a spline shaft that'll slide out the bottom that's attached to that box over there. But this whole column here is exactly what I need. I can just pop this whole thing off and reuse that. Same with this one. The difference being that the shaft is attached to the box. Now, the interesting thing with this column is that pretty much everything up here I can't use, because this section here is bigger and there's a whole bunch of linkage inside this tube that goes down to there for the shifting mechanism on the tree. But the bottom half I can use, because this steering shaft is exactly the same one that I have in my truck. It's in great shape. It's actually in better shape than that one. You can see there I had to cut the bolts off of that one. I had to grind into them. This one is in perfect shape, and it's got a built-in joint here and a built-in rag joint there with a slip. So I could actually use the bottom of this and the top of that to get what I need, which is really cool. And I can use that to take apart just to see what's in there. And I can use this as probably the cleanest out of all of them, because that one's in kind of rough shape. I mean, I could hit that with a sander and sand it all up and clean it up and everything, but this one is actually in much better shape. The wiring on this one is in much better shape, although I think the wiring on this one is a little bit different than the one that's in my truck, because this is 4 years older than mine. 4 years younger than mine, sorry. So I'll have to do some looking to see what parts I can use, but I've got everything I need here now, I think. So I can definitely clean that up and move on to the next step for the electric steering stuff. I just replaced the new lock barrel that I had put in this thing 2 years ago with the lock barrel that I tested on the bench. And let me show you what I'm getting here as I boot this thing up. I'm going to keep the, you can see there the keys in. I'm going to keep the camera on the head unit here. So there's the fuel pump. There's the screen. Same deal. Following this diagram where I've got a relay, there's a positive, negative. I've got the ignition here and then the connector here. So I'm going to double check this one last time. You can see this is sort of scabbed in here, but it should be correct. This is my ground, and that is going to 85. The positive is going to 30, which is this guy here. This yellow wire goes all the way through the firewall into the front. This is the 86, and that goes to the ignition key. So that's this wire here going to the ignition key. And the last one is the pink wire, which goes to the throttle body. So let me hook up the battery and let's see if this thing works. All right, here we go. All right, so wired in, that does work. So clearly what I've got to do now is wire that relay in permanently and then figure out what's going on with the actual sniper, because it's still not turning over. But knowing that it's keeping that charge is a good thing. That's one less thing to worry about. Okay. So now that I know what I'm going to do with the wiring, what I'm going to do with the actual relay is I'm going to put it on this panel right next to this other relay right here. So I'll have two relays there. One is for the actual panel. The other is going to be for the starting unit. So I'll clean all that stuff up. So I've got to basically take the panel back off, drill another hole, and get it set up to put back in here. But that'll be a project for, maybe tomorrow. And then I've got to get some decent red wire, because I want to run a power wire to this so it's very clear that it's power, and try to start color coordinating these things. So that'll be up next. So that's going to do it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you get a chance, like and subscribe. That helps the channel. And there's a link here for merch. Anything you buy there goes into days like this where I can afford to buy parts and spend time putting stuff together. So there's t-shirts and hats and other things up there. If you like them, please buy something. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks.